All right, so we're going to answer this question before us. It says that we need to find the inverse function of the following and state the domain and range. So here it is right here. And the very first thing I want to draw your attention to is the fact that we have a restricted domain. This is going to be very important to how we answer this question. Let's begin by writing down what the domain of f is. And it's given to us right here. It's simply 1 to infinity. We're then going to figure out what the range of f is going to be. Now, to figure out what the range of f is going to be, we're just going to give our graph a quick sketch. So we're going to come here like this. Now, the graph is a parabola that has been shifted 1 to the right and then 4 up. So it's going to look like this. But this is where we need to be careful, because as you can see, we have this restricted domain, which means my graph only exists from 1 to infinity, where here's 1 and then infinities that way. So that means this part of the graph doesn't exist. We're only caring about, if I can draw this nicely, we only care about this branch. That's the only thing we care about. Now, the reason why our domain has been restricted is because if you cast your mind back to the very beginning of this lesson, we spoke about the fact that the inverse function only exists if the original function is 1 to 1. So if we restrict the domain like this, we have a 1 to 1 function, which means the inverse function exists. So that's the rationale behind why they've restricted the domain. Now, the range of this function is just all the possible y values. So that's going to be from 4 to infinity, like that. Perfect. Now, once we've done this, we can now identify what the domain of the inverse is going to be and what the range of the inverse is going to be. And I might have to just move this a little bit. Perfect. There we go. All right. So remember, the way in which we find the domain and range of the inverse is just by swapping them over from the original function. So the domain of the inverse is simply the range of the function, so it's 4 to infinity. And then the range of the inverse is simply the domain of the function, so it's 1 to infinity. Perfect. All right, once we've done that, we actually now need to find the inverse function itself. Remember the procedure by which we do this. So we're going to find the inverse of x. To do that, the first thing you do is let y be equal to f of x. And now I can say y is equal to what we have right here. So x minus 1 squared plus 4. You then swap your x's and y's. So I'm going to get x is equal to y minus 1 squared plus 4. And then you solve for y. So I'm going to get x minus 4 is equal to y minus 1 squared. Then I'm going to square root both sides to get rid of the square here. So I'm going to get plus or minus the square root of x minus 4 is equal to y minus 1, and then I'll plus 1 to both sides. So I'm going to get 1 plus or minus the square root of x minus 4 is equal to y. Okay, this is where we need to pause for a moment and consider the fact that we've been given both a plus and a minus. That's going to cause us some problems, and we cannot, let me stress, we cannot leave our answer like this. It's either going to be the plus or the minus, but not both. So how can we determine which one it's going to be? If we were just to draw what we have immediately here, what this is a square root graph that has been shifted 1 up and then 4 to the right. So like here. So that means our graph is going to be here. And remember, a square root graph has a positive section. So this is the positive part, and it has the negative part. And let me see if I can do that again. It has the negative part here. We need to reject one of these branches, and we need to figure out which of these we're going to reject. The way in which we determine which one we reject is by looking at the range of our inverse, because we know that the range of our inverse is from 1 to infinity. So from 1 to infinity, so it's 1 up. Which means this bottom part of the graph doesn't exist. We only care about this top part. So we can come and we can write down what we've done here. So let me just quickly write this down. So that means you can come back later to your notes and you'll understand what you've done here. So I'm going to write, whoa. I'm going to say ignore negative. Since the range of the inverse is equal to 1 to infinity. And that's telling me that I can reject the negative part of it. All right, so once all this is said and done now, I can actually write my final answer. So my final answer is going to be the following. It's going to be the inverse of x. So the inverse of f. My domain is 4 to infinity. My codomain is all real numbers. And then I'm going to go, this is equal to, now I just write down this, so it's 1 plus, not plus or minus, just the plus, the square root of x minus 4. 1x minus 4, that all looks good. Perfect. So now that we've done that, we will highlight it like this. And there is our answer. So we're all done. So this rough little sketch here really helped us out. And you can also see that it makes sense that we only accepted the positive branch because this looks like it's been reflected in y is equal to x, doesn't it? And just to finish this off, let me just tidy this up. This was the inverse, wasn't it? And the other one was my original. Perfect. That's how we approach this question. Hopefully you found it useful.